welcoming back my dear friend, my dear brother, Gideon. Thrilled to be here. We're going to talk about a really important project, a really important event that is coming up, and I'm going to really give him the floor to really lay out what he's been working on behind the scenes, or what he's got going on in his world behind the scenes. But before we even dig into that, brother, how have you been?
I've been doing well. Thanks for having me back on, William.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you here. Every time I do, it's a real blast. People love you, love the work that you do. I love the work you do. I love your passion for the faith, and I love you as a near and dear brother as well. So I'm really happy to have you here with me, and to have the opportunity to really talk about this particular event. Can you lay it out for the audience? What is this event that we're going to be talking about, and why is it important?
Yeah, so I've been hired on as the Institute coordinator for a new institute called the St. Basil Institute for the Theology of Creation. Wow. So we had a meeting this summer of a number of priests and academics, both in Europe and America. We came together in France last summer and went and talked about the important issue of the doctrine of creation. Because, you know, a lot of the discussion today around creation is based around science, really, right? And of course, there's a lot of good stuff that can be done in science. I don't mean to downplay science, but we've become so focused on scientific discussion of creation that we're almost unable to have a theological discussion about the doctrine of creation.
Yeah.
But the Catechism of the Catholic Church tells us that creation is the foundation, both of salvation history, so everything that happens in Scripture and is central to the faith, but also for catechesis on important life issues, such as why we're here, why God created us, what is our purpose, what are we supposed to do in relation to other people, in relation to God, in relation to the creation. So really almost every question that plagues us today goes right back to this issue of the doctrine of creation.
Yeah.
You know, a friend of mine who works for the Institute was recently in Rome and was speaking with some seminarians there. And he asked them, what is the catechesis like you getting on creation? And they said, well, we're not getting any catechesis on creation because it's so tied up in these scientific issues. You know, it's almost like professors don't want to touch it like it's a hot potato. You know, you have to pass it along. And so then as a result, they end up not touching on all these important issues, or if they do, it's very brief.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to open up an academic discussion again on the central doctrine. And so we had this meeting this summer. We decided, all right, we need to start the St. Basil Institute. This is just really pressing today. And after the conference, you know, we went and talked, and we're trying to figure out what is going to be our first public event that we're going to do. And I was asked by my boss to read through Laudato Si, because it was a recent papal statement that related to creation. So I went and I read through Laudato Si. And, you know, I tend to be in the more traditionalist side of things. So I know there's a lot of tension right now between many of the traditionalists in the church and Pope Francis. Yeah, I went and read this encyclical, and I was amazed. This is one of the best papal encyclicals, I think, within church history.
Wow.
And it's so caught up in the culture wars, I think, of the church. You know, people hear, all right, this is from Pope Francis. There's this vision in their mind that Pope Francis is a liberal. They hear it's about caring for the environment. That sounds like a liberal cause. And so there's a big chunk of the church that wants to dismiss it based on the culture war. And then there's another group that wants to use it, sort of bash their side of the culture war. They're saying, all right, you know, this means we need to be good members of the Democratic Party. We need to push environmentalism. That means we need to have policies that are going to reduce population. And, you know, when you read the encyclical, Pope Francis again and again is attacking secular approaches to environmentalism. That he has a section where he says there's some people who care more about the trafficking of animals than the trafficking of human beings. Those are sections where he critiques people who don't care about the dignity of life. So they think, oh, what you need is contraception and abortion to deal with environmentalism. And Pope Francis, that's exactly the opposite. Right? We need to have the proper relationship with nature. This is a theme Pope Francis returns to again and again, Laudato Si, is our relationship with nature. Right? Starting with the Enlightenment, there was an idea that humans are no longer part of nature, that we have transcended beyond nature. Right? In the ancient world, they thought humans were so much a part of nature that there's really almost no distinction between humans and nature. And the the church pushed away from that. So now humans are made in the image of God. They're endowed with rationality. There's something unique about humans. But humans are still part of the created order, along with everything else that's been created in this great hierarchy of being. And we have at the very bottom things like rocks, then we go up to things like plants, and we can go up to animals, and then humans, and then the angels, and then God. And there's this beautiful order going all the way from God, who's uncreated, and creates this whole order of creation. But humans are still part of that created order. It's only God who is outside of that created order. And so when you get to the Enlightenment, people like Descartes are arguing that actually humans are outside of nature. And so we can impose our vision of the good upon nature, and we don't have to have any concept of the natural world. And so as a result, they throw out natural law. And this natural law is not simply that we look at what animals do. This is the big misconception about natural law, is that we look out at nature, we see what animals do, and we imitate that. Yep. The natural law is that there is a certain nature that humans have, and there are certain things that are good or bad for human nature. And we do that by observing humans. And so once you no longer have a concept of humans as part of a created order, then you lose natural law, and now humans can do whatever they want to nature. Now, you have, for example, Heidegger, who is a modern German philosopher, who argues that it is the nature of man to inflict damage upon nature. There's no possible idea of a harmonious relationship between humans and nature. Well, this means the only way we can care for the creation would be to destroy humans, essentially. It's naturally that humans are up against nature. You either have one side where you just accept that humans destroy nature, the other side where you almost destroy humans. And what Pope Francis harkens back to in Laudato Si is we can have this harmonious relationship with nature. And maybe before I get into even more about Laudato Si, I just want to make sure we get clear what this conference is. So we had this whole discussion, and we decided what we need is a conference on ecology. You know, one thing we could have done is we could have said, all right, we're all going to meet in Rome. We're all going to get into a little tiny room, and we're going to discuss ecology, and no one else is ever going to hear about it. That's unfortunately how a lot of academic conferences happen. You know, with the internet nowadays, there's more discussion nowadays really of theology going on the internet than there is at these academic conferences even. I heard recently that one of the largest Catholic philosophical conferences recruited their speakers by looking at who is popular on YouTube and who is being interviewed on YouTube channels.
Wow, I had no idea.
So really the internet is driving a lot of discourse now, even within academia. And so we wanted to put out a conference that would be online that anyone could get to. And this means we can now get speakers from anywhere in the world that are interested in this subject and have something to contribute. So we decided to put together this conference. It's going to be on April 22nd. There's a link we'll have in the show notes to register. And there's also a discount code Albrecht to get you 10% off. It's only going to be $25 to register. So you get that 10% off. It's down to even less than that. So it's not that much. And that money is really just for us to recoup the costs. And it's not even close to recouping the costs. You know, we've put in hours to putting this together.
I know that. You're right.
And so we'll have a lot of great speakers here. So maybe I could share my screen and we could go through some of these.
Yeah, without a doubt. Do you have the option to, or do I have to give you the permission?
See. Share screen. Here we go. Can you?
There we go. There we go. Perfect.
This is on our website. So I'm going to go through some really wonderful speakers that we got. You know, I reached out to people and we mentioned this topic to them, and almost everyone gave an immediate yes, I really, really want to do this, because I think so many theologians recognize this is an important issue today, and it's not being discussed.
Right.
The first speaker we have is Pater Edmund Waldstein. He's a monk out in Austria. He runs the blog The Josias, or at least he used to. He recently stepped down as the lead editor from it. Has written a lot of really, really wonderful articles, has done a lot of really, really wonderful podcasts, especially on the issue of Catholic social teaching. But he also got his degree from Thomas Aquinas College in California. And a big thing Thomas Aquinas College in California has been doing is trying to bring back an idea of natural philosophy. So he's always been very interested in this relationship between Catholic social teaching and natural philosophy. And he's going to be giving a talk on what is nature. Because we use this word nature a lot today, but we use it very, very equivocally. And so I'm really excited to hear his talk on what is nature. Our next speaker we have is Thomas Stork. He's written for quite a while on the issue of Catholic social teaching.
Yeah.
I got his book a little while ago. What was it called? Economics of Justice and Charity, which is a really, really wonderful summary of the Catholic Church's teachings on economics. And he just goes through papal encyclicals, starting with Leo XIII, walking all the way through until Pope Francis, and showing that there's a real harmony on the central teachings on economics of Catholic social teaching. But the reason I got him is he was an editor of this really wonderful volume here, The Glory of the Cosmos, A Catholic Approach to the Natural World, which is really on the exact same theme as our conference.
Yeah.
And really goes through what is the Catholic teaching on nature, on the Catholic philosophical tradition, and then how can we apply that to the issues of ecology that we face today. And he's going to be talking on man's perpetual desire to destroy nature. Yeah. Because we seem to have this struggle, especially today, right? So you could look, for example, at the transgender issue, right? Where there's no idea anymore of a nature of being male or female. And so we could just destroy that and be whatever we want.
Yeah.
And really we need the central theme of remaining in proper harmony with nature.
That is a big problem that we're dealing with today.
Yeah. Next, we have Dr. Jared Goff. I'm sure anyone who's followed your channel for a while is familiar with Jared Goff. Very good friend of mine, and really one of the top scholars alive today on Bonaventure and Scotus.
Yeah, no doubt.
And there's quite a lot of citations of St. Bonaventure within Laudato Si. And I was discussing this with him while I was reading Laudato Si. And I thought, we really need to get him to talk about how Bonaventure is used within Laudato Si. Really, what are the central themes of Laudato Si and how they relate to the central themes in the theology of St. Bonaventure.
Wow.
And him to discuss that. We have Father Francesco Giordano. He's the director of Human Life International and is also a professor at both the Angelicum and Catholic University of America. Really, really wonderful professor. And he's going to be talking about the theology of history. He's been doing a lot of research recently in Christopher Dawson. Oh, wow. And especially how the doctrine of creation influences our theology of history and how we should look at history and how that will relate to ecology. So I'm very excited for that approach. So I think it'll be a very different approach than a lot of the other talks we're getting here. We then have Father Daniel Dozier, a very wonderful priest. He's a professor of sacred scripture at Byzantine Catholic Seminary. He's also my spiritual father, so it'll be good to have him here. Incredible. And it's a very, very wonderful priest and a great scholar. He knows the Old Testament really well. In his sermons, he'll just go through, take a certain theme and trace it all the way through Scripture. And he's also connected it quite a bit to liturgical theology. Because a central theme in the Scriptures is how creation is a temple. And so the 7 days of creation, if you follow those out and then you turn to the book of Exodus and look at the construction of the tabernacle, you'll actually see that the creation of the world closely parallels the construction of the tabernacle. Then if you look at the layout of the Garden of Eden, and then you compare that to the tabernacle, you also find the Garden of Eden is another tabernacle.
Wow.
So really the whole creation in Scripture is presented as this grand temple. And so we need not only a practical approach to ecology, but really a liturgical approach to ecology as well. And I'm very excited to see how he's going to take that theme. Then finally, we have Sean Doherty. So Sean actually was doing a series of podcasts on the New Polity podcast about how he, in his work in farming, takes Catholic theology and philosophy and applies it in his farming. And he gave a number of wonderful discussions on the New Polity podcast. And so he's going to be talking about that same theme here. So, all our other talks are more theoretical. How do we take theology and philosophy and apply it to the issue of ecology more generally? But he's going to be showing us in practice, how do you actually apply this? Because it's not simply that we need the correct government policies. Of course, that's important, but it's also important that we in our own lives, in whatever place we've been put, follow out the principle of subsidiarity by working in line with the creation, working along with natural law. And then hosting the whole conference, we have Jacob Imam of New Polity. I'm sure he'll do a great job hosting this conference as well. So yeah, I'm really, really excited for this whole conference. I think we've brought together a lot of really good people for this conference. And yeah, so again, to everyone, do you have anything you want to say?
You got heavy hitters there. You got some of the best in the world there. That, I mean, you're being quite humble about it, but I'm blown away at the list of people you got there. You got an incredible lineup. That is very impressive there, brother.
Thank you. I want to give a tip to anyone starting out, on YouTube or working in this area at all. A lot of these academics, they sound very fancy. So, they're not, people think, oh, they don't want to reach out to me, But if you reach out to a lot of academics, they're usually very happy to talk about their research with you. Yep. You can easily get them on your YouTube channel. A lot of them will be happy to talk to you over the phone about whatever you'd like. Of course, related to their research. But, right. A lot of these academics, they do interesting research and no one ever wants to talk about it. So if someone wants to hear about their research, they're usually very excited to. And so we got some great people here, and I'm just really excited for this conference. Again, it's on April 22nd. That's a Saturday. It will start at 9:30 a.m. New York time. That's 15:30 if you're in Rome. Yeah. We have a number of Europeans at it. And then 6:30 in the morning for me. So I'll be getting up nice and early. It'll be a good time.
Now, let me pick your brain. For people to be able to tune in, do they tune in via their web browser? Do they need Zoom? How are they able to tune into the event?
Yeah, so it'll be on Zoom. So if you sign up, it will give you an email on Eventbrite, and we'll have a link that will activate on the day of the conference. It'll open up 30 minutes before it starts, and it will be a Zoom call. And actually, it will be a Zoom call where, of course, if you want to, you can have your camera off. But if you'd like to, you can turn your camera on, see who else is attending the conference, because a lot of internet conferences tend to be very impersonal, where it's just a webinar and you have no clue. You could be the only person listening. There could be 100 other people listening. You don't know who is. So you'll be able to see everyone who's up on the screen. And of course, you don't have to make yourself public if you'd want to, but just to make it a little more personal and feel more like a real in-person conference.
Incredible.
And I also get asked a lot by people, all right, this sounds like a great thing, but I can't make it. If you register, we'll be recording the whole conference and we'll send you the recording probably within the next week or so afterwards, because I'll need to edit it up and splice up the conferences.
Yeah. That really is handy. And I can tell you that because a lot of people are working or busy, don't have time until, a day later or even a week later, or who knows how long later. And that will be very handy. They'll have the opportunity then to be able to tune in at a later time then.
Yeah.
Very, very neat. Awesome. Now, let me ask you this. The event, you said it will begin at 9:30 New York time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, does the event have any breaks at all, or is it just straightforward?
Yeah, so we're going to have the first 3 talks. So Pater Edmund Waldstein, Thomas Stork, and Jared Goff. And then we'll have a 20-minute break in the middle, and then we'll have 3 more talks. But since it is online, you're always welcome to turn off your camera, go get a sandwich, skip a talk and come back and listen to it later. And it will all be recorded. Yeah, I wanted more break time. As we're putting together the schedule, It already ends up being extremely long because as it is, we got 6 people here, and there was a whole list of other people I wanted to invite that I wasn't able to, as we only have so much time.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's great.
I'd also like to mention, with the St. Basil Institute, we're starting up, and we'd like to get more academics on board with working with us. So if you go to our website, which will be linked below, we have a contact us page where you can send us an email if you'd like to be involved at all in future projects we do. We're organizing another conference. It's probably going to be in person in Rome in September. If you're going to be in Rome and you'd be interested, we're working on trying to put together a fellows program. So there will be academics who will be official members of the Institute. If they're interested, you can be involved just a little bit. You could be involved quite a bit. We're working on publishing some books. We have really 3 books in the process right now that are going to be published sometime, probably within the next year. So we have a lot of great projects coming up.
Are you able to give a little peek into those, or are those top secret?
I'll give a short peek into them.
Okay.
So the first book we have will actually be a compilation of all the talks from this conference. So everyone with their talk will be submitting a written version, and we'll be publishing a book of all those talks. So if you really like something in a conference talk and you'd like to cite it in your paper, it's always awkward to cite like speeches and papers. So you'll have them all written. You can go up and use them. You can go read through them closely if you'd like to. The next project we're working on is a set of collected essays on Yuval Harari. So Yuval Harari is a atheist who is working for the World Economic Forum. He's also a professor in Israel, who's written a number of books on using evolution as a foundation myth for transhumanism. So he'll write in a very impersonal way of like, this is the history of the world. This is what I think is going to happen next. And, I can't stop what's going to happen next. That's just simply what's going to happen. And I read through his books. Anyone who's following me on Twitter saw me posting lots of sections from his books. So just all the horrifying things in him. He had one section where he talks about a tribe, I think it was in the Amazon, that would kill misshapen children. They'd kill the elderly. They'd kill women in their tribe. And he says, they're all happy when anthropologists went and interviewed them. And they're also polyamorous and they're communists. So we can't judge them at all. That's just their culture.
Wow.
And this is a guy, who's setting policy around the world. And so we're working on how can we use the Catholic theology of creation to respond to, if he's going to put forward his creation myth, we'll put forward our creation myth, and we can have a battle of whose do you want the vision of the future to be like. And then the third book we're working on actually will be a book on that theme of the temple and creation. Incredible. And how creation is a temple. We're actually going to be tracing that theme starting from the very beginning of Genesis all the way through to the book of Revelation and tying it in with the Catholic theological traditions. We're returning to a lot of old authors like St. Bonaventure and Blessed John Duns Scotus and Angelo Volpez and these old authors, and trying to show how they can help inform this theme. And actually there's a common harmony between the Catholic theological tradition on creation and what the scriptures teach on creation.
Wow, every project of yours that you mentioned really is mind-blowing, incredible. Do you have an idea of when you'd like to push them out, or there really is no kind of timetable yet?
So I think they're all going to come out probably sometime within the next year or two, as we're working on them. The collected essays and the conference speeches, will both be in the writing process sometime in the next few months. But then, we have to go through the whole publishing process. We're currently looking for a publisher, deciding if we're going to self-publish. So it will be a little while till they're actually out in the market.
Yeah, there really is not a lot out there that is very good and solid when it comes to dealing with creation, at least not that you can find accessible. So this will be very, very, very important.
Yeah, with the book on the temple, the creation as a temple, that started originally as a project of we needed a good textbook on creation, because those seminarians told us they're not teaching about creation in seminaries. So all right, I went and I took contemporary literature on creation. I read through like a dozen books on this subject that are written now, and they're all focused on like science, historical criticism of the Bible, and then they'll sort of take apart everything and then try and reassemble everything, and it doesn't work, And then you can go back to older manuals. So one older manual that is in English that you could access is, what's his name? Trying to remember his name. Famous Jesuit from the early 20th century. Wrote a bunch of textbooks that were used in American seminaries for the early 20th century. can't remember his name right now, but I read through, it's a good book, but the scholastic manual style is very unpopular nowadays. And
do you remember the name of the book? Do you remember the name?
Oh, it's within a series of volumes. It's not called On Creation and Elevation or something like that.
I'm trying to remember the name of the author.
I'll comment it in the comments if I remember it. I'm sure I'll have a bunch of people screaming at the screen right now of what it is.
Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, we read through that. The older manual style is simply not as relevant today. People don't tend to like it. So we need a book that would take. There's also been a lot of good research done within biblical studies in the last 100 years that really needs to be brought to the forefront. So that was our approach of, initially it's just going to be a general textbook. But once you do a general textbook, you won't realize just how many different topics you would need to cover. So, all right, we're going to pick one theme and look at everything, but in light of this one theme. So it will still be very usable as a textbook if professors in seminaries are looking for something to teach the doctrine of creation. And we're in discussions with some people who know bishops to hopefully get this into seminaries as well.
Yeah, the one thing that I have heard very often, and hear it very, very often, is that the idea of evolution is really pushed upon priests and deacons, and a lot of the times they really don't know how to answer charges against it. A lot of them mean very well and say, look, well, we don't embrace it, but it gets shoved down our throat because the story of creation in Scripture and in the Fathers really doesn't get touched upon a lot in seminaries. And I personally see that as a major problem. I think you'd agree with me that really is a major problem. And at least we've got you and many others that are on board with, trying to remedy this particular issue. Let me ask you this. When it comes to science and serious scholarship, is there any kind of movement towards defending creationism from the Bible? What would you say to that? Is there any kind of movement there?
Yes, there's been quite a lot of work we call creationism, right, within the Protestant world on science. Right. And when we had our initial conference, there's a number of people at the conference who thought, all right, we as an institute, we should also have a scientific part of it, And we decided, no, there are lots of good people working in science. There's people working in defending a young earth perspective, defending an old earth perspective, defending theistic evolution. And we thought, all right, there's lots of good scientists. All we're going to do if we try and talk about science as theologians is probably look like idiots in front of scientists and discredit our own work. And you'll notice this, you go to websites where there are good, faithful Christians who are doing science, and you read their scientific stuff, it's excellent. Then they try and talk about theology, and you're just like cringing really badly if they don't know the first thing about this. Yeah. So we thought, all right, let them do their scientific work. Let us do our theological work. But one issue, we're hoping to do a future conference on this, is the philosophy of science. Yeah. Because even whether you go to theistic evolution, creationism, intelligent design, doesn't matter what part of the scientific world you go to, they're all really working within a certain framework of science that came out of the early Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, especially Francis Bacon. Because traditionally within Aristotle, and the church took this up, there are 4 causes to a thing. There's the efficient cause, so what we would usually call a cause, right? If you have a rock and you push it, the efficient cause of it rolling down the hill is the person who pushed it, But then you also have the material cause, what something is made up of. And really, modern science stops short at the efficient cause and the material cause. There's no other, and this is Bacon's whole thing, that there's no other causes. But for Aristotle, there's also a formal cause, sort of what the thing is. All right, so if it is a rock, it might be made up of all these different minerals, but there is a formal cause of rockness, which is what makes it to be a rock. It's not just a clump of atoms, but it has a certain rockness to it that forms it. And then finally, most importantly, really, there is the final cause. What is the purpose of something? What is it tending towards? And that is especially ignored by modern science. And so I've been thinking, we've been discussing this behind the scenes, could we possibly have a conference on the philosophy of science and hopefully bring together, there's a lot of Catholic philosophers who've done really good work sort of solving all the issues of how you would integrate philosophy into modern science, especially people like Ed Fazer and Rob Coons have done good work on this, Wolfgang Smith. Right. And so could we get those sorts of people in dialogue with the scientists so that they're actually working together on this project? And that's something we'd like to do in the future. So not directly taking on science, and also not taking a specific stance on the science here. The Catholic Church has said that this is an open discussion. You could be a young earth, you could hold to theistic evolution. So as an institute, we don't take a stance on that. You have to affirm what the Catholic Church teaches on the doctrine of creation.
Yeah.
You know, if people are going off and believing that Adam and Eve weren't real, that the Bible didn't actually happen, you know, that's outside the bounds of our institute. At that point, you're either at the fringes of Catholic teaching or entirely outside of it. And we're trying to stay firmly in the Catholic tradition. And,
no doubt.
There's also a big attitude of a lot of theologians today of, all right, we're going to take the minimum the Catholic Church affirms, and then we're just going to believe whatever we want unless it's de fide. Yeah. And our approach is the opposite of, let's take the whole Catholic tradition and try to be as faithful to the tradition as possible, not just believe whatever we want. You know, the best theologians really are the least innovative ones, the ones who are trying to go back and understand what the church has always taught on a specific issue.
Yeah, no doubt. You're not reinventing the wheel. I've noted that the very best hearken to the traditions of the fathers that have upheld the very teaching that is entrenched within Holy Writ. It's a very, very good point that you make there. I always, one thing that I always note is that if I'm going to pick up a book where the author claims to have discovered something that no early church father ever knew of, well, I think there's probably going to be a problem there. Because the early fathers, I think they knew a little bit more than we do today.
Yeah. Now, I discovered a point recently in the Hebrew of a verse of Proverbs when it says Christ was established, right? The wisdom was established from the foundation. Right. Was it from the word for established from the beginning of the world? That word established there, I looked it up in a Hebrew lexicon, and I saw, oh, wait, this is actually not simply a general establishing. It's actually a ritual word that sometimes it can refer just to general pouring out of a liquid, but usually refers specifically to the pouring out of a drink offering at the base of an altar at the temple. Wow. And, you know, I'm thinking I found something original here. I go to one of my favorite commentaries on the wisdom sections of Proverbs. It's Christ in the Cosmos by Jean-Francois Bonnefoy from about 100 years ago. And he already noticed this in his commentary.
Yeah.
He has a different take on it, which is he thinks it's a pouring out of oil and an anointing of Christ to be a priest.
Right.
But still, it's that temple imagery of pouring out upon something being poured out upon Christ, or Christ being poured out. And so whenever you find something, it's almost always you look in the tradition and someone else has already figured it out. And I'm sure there's plenty of authors behind him if I started searching up for his sources.
Yeah, no doubt. The one thing that does come to my mind would be when I was working on, when Father Coppins and I were working on our book on Mary, and we were playing around in the TLG, the Thesaurus Lingua Grece, and it was he who noted the connection between Judges 11, the words of Jephthah's virgin daughter, and Holy Mary. And I remember the very words that he uttered to me, where he told me, he said, I'd be shocked if I'm the first one to ever notice this. And I remember we were able to find multiple early fathers that did notice it. So good. I would argue that is a good sign, though, that you know, you're on good ground there, right?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I always try to be very cautious if I come to an interpretation that's just totally different, you know, than the one that's been historically held of a passage. And just sometimes to be like, all right, I don't know how the fathers ended up at this interpretation of the passage, but I'll let it sit for a while. And usually, you know, 6 months, a year later, I'll come back to the same issue. Oh, yeah, I remember I was studying that a while ago. And all of a sudden it clicks and you figure out how they came up with that interpretation.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, when it comes to the idea of putting together this other particular conference, have you thought of a particular date, or have you ironed out maybe spoken to a few people, and you have maybe kind of an idea of wanting to do that maybe in 2024 or later this year?
Yeah, the Philosophy of Science conference I mentioned, that's really just on paper right now. You know, I have a few little notes scratched down here and there about it. So we really don't have anything solid on that. That could be our next big online conference. It could be a few down the road. We're probably going to do one of these sorts of online conferences every year around the spring.
Yeah.
But we don't have that exactly set in stone. But we are definitely doing in not April, or September, a in-person conference in Rome. This will be sort of a closed-door academic conference because we're really looking at finding people who'd be interested in being fellows. But if you're a student in Rome, or you're an academic in Rome, or you'd be interested in going there, please reach out to us through the website and we can add you to the list, because I'm about to start contacting people about that conference.
Yeah, and by the time you people are watching the show, there will be a link right down there. Definitely, there is a contact link on the webpage already, right? Yeah,
on the webpage, there's a little contact us box you can just fill out.
Awesome. And you are the one that is dealing with that, I believe.
Yeah, we have lots. I'm not the only person involved with this, but I am the only full-time employee. There's a lot of other people who work other jobs or are academics with their own teaching positions. So I handle, all the emails and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, and the only thing I would recommend people be a little bit patient. If it takes a little bit of time to reply, don't worry, you will get a reply. At times, a lot of emails tend to pour in, so be a little bit patient there. You will get a response. But it really does sound like a very, very important conference. And here's the one thing that I know, and that is that having worked a conference similar to this about a year and a half ago, and having viewed many others, the one thing that I noted before is that a lot of the times scholars will come out and say, well, look, the talk that I gave, I don't want that to be out there in the public domain. Don't publish it online. Well, the incredible thing about this particular conference you've got is that people will have full access to the event, to all the talks afterward. That is, you don't always get that. So that would be very, very handy. Let me ask you this. Is it possible? Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, with that that's why we're doing both in-person and online events. Because there will be some people who will not be willing to do online stuff. There was one priest we had in our first in-person conference. He said, if I gave this talk back home, he's a priest. If my bishop found out about it, I'd probably be kicked out of the diocese, where he's a very liberal bishop. And so you have to sometimes be careful of certain people are in positions where they know the right things, but they cannot say the right things without being fired.
Yeah, what really is unfortunate, but it is true to the time that we live in today. Now, here is an idea. I don't know if you've thought of it. The event, it will be available for people to check out afterwards. Again, will it be available via MP3 as well? Maybe audio as well. Is that a possibility? Maybe sometime in the future.
Yeah, possibly sometime in the future. I think initially we're just going to have the video, and it will be only at least initially only for people who register. We might put parts of the conference up later on YouTube, but that will be down the road. If you'd like to anytime soon, and have any guarantee of getting them all, please make sure to register so you can get them all.
Yeah, no doubt, definitely.
Yeah, if there are people who are interested in MP3 who are registered for the conference, please reach out to us, and we can definitely make MP3 versions if people want to listen to them in the car, and that'd just be a lot easier. But unless there's any demand for it, we don't plan to do that.
Yeah, if you all want to MP3 and there's a high demand, definitely reach out. And the reason I know that is because if there is not a high demand, then it really is very time consuming. And we both have a lot of projects going on. I know the brother Gideon does as well. So I know it would be very time consuming. So if there is a huge demand, definitely reach out to him and let him know. Otherwise, you've got a lot of great projects down the line, brother. I mean, really, really great material that you're working on. You've done a lot of work in this field as well. You particularly have a great depth of knowledge on the early church fathers in this particular area as well. Will the early church fathers be highlighted at all during this incredible conference?
Yeah, I know one of our speakers, Father Daniel Dozier, has done a bunch of work in the church fathers. I know a lot of our other speakers tend to focus much more on the Middle Ages and scholasticism, but there definitely is a lot relevant on the church fathers in this area. One area I think really needs to be researched more is St. Irenaeus's teachings on creation, because you really have everything, that's really taken other theologians like 2,000 years to figure out. And you look back at Irenaeus and he already figured this out at the beginning. And so he's just using different language than we would now. Yeah. And so I think if there's an area that him on creation, then also St. Ephrem on creation. The whole theme I'm discussing of the temple and creation, that's all there in St. Ephrem's Hymns of Paradise, where he lays it all out. Great work as well. Great work. One of his most incredible works, you can very clearly tell. And the reason I have a great amount of respect for the great Ephrem is because very clearly you can tell that later fathers were very much influenced by his great style. One particular father, what a coincidence you bring up. One particular father that I am working through right now in the Greek is Romanos, Saint Romanos the Melodist. You very clearly know, as you know, or very well, brother, a lot of his style very similar to the great poetic style, the beautiful hymns that you find within the great Saint Ephrem. In fact, isn't the great Ephrem? He's a doctor of the church as well, isn't he? I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. That really is incredible. Any other particular thing about this event that you'd like to highlight, or any thoughts you have in your mind? I just recommend people, again, if you're interested in this conference, please sign up for it. I think it will be very interesting. You can use the code Albrecht to get 10% off, you're getting a great discount on it. And if you can't make it for the conference, you can always watch the talks later. And if you're interested in working with us, or maybe a professor or a priest who's interested in working with us, please have them reach out to us. There's a lot of future things we could do with this institute. And if you're an academic and you're sitting there watching this and you say, all right, the project you guys really need to do on creation is something like we never thought of, please reach out to us with that, because we're always looking for new topics on creation to discuss. Definitely. Great ideas there, brother. I think you've really laid out, great amount of material there. I am looking forward to checking it out as well. And I hope everybody's as pumped for it as I am. And there will be every link that we talked about will be down there below. And by the time this does premiere, I always do my best to be there in the chat available in the premiere. If anybody has anything on their mind, if the brother Gideon is available, he'll be there. If not, I'll relay it to him. We're really looking forward to people, checking it out, because in my opinion, it truly is a one-of-a-kind event. You don't have events like this come around very often. You all have put together a group of great minds. A near and dear brother of mine, Dr. Goff, great mind. What a great and incredible scholar as well. And the other figures, even though I may not know them the way you do, they are great intellectuals. And I think the most important thing is they are God-loving, devout Catholics. Isn't that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Every person we got there has a very strong life of prayer. And that's the most important thing. I was listening quite a bit to Pater Edmund Waldstein discussing Catholic social teaching and the philosophy of nature. And I'm listening to one of his talks where a priest emailed into his podcast and asked, how do I preach about this? On what Sundays? And he said, I'm assigned to a parish with a lot of people who are very lukewarm Catholics. And he says, what I preach about is the importance of the spiritual life. And it just struck me, yes, we can talk about all this nice theology, but unless we have that foundation there of the spiritual life, all the rest of it is completely worthless. St. Paul said that Christ has made foolish the wisdom of this world. If we don't have that foundation of Christ, all the rest of our wisdom is foolishness. Yeah, no doubt. That is an incredible thought to really just dwell upon, and really thought-provoking words from the great and incredible St. Paul. Brother, are there any other thoughts you'd like to share with the audience, or any other words before we wrap up? I've had a great time talking with you. I've had a lot of fun talking about this incredible event coming up. Do you want to point the audience to anything else you might be working on other than this particular event, or any other particular detail about the event? The floor is yours, brother. Yeah, if people are interested in other work I do on creation, I also run a blog called the Creation Theology Fellowship, which, this institute is more academically oriented. And so we also wanted to this is a separate organization. So it's not affiliated all at the St. Basil Institute. It's a separate organization that's really trying to reach out more to lay people. We do quite a lot of work on devotions related to creation. So we did meditating on the mysteries of the Rosary through creation, connecting each mystery of the Rosary with some mystery of creation. We did the Stations of the Cross in creation and how Christ is the new Adam who undoes the sin of the first Adam. We've also do quite a lot of reflections. So we did reflections on creation during Advent. We've been doing them now during Lent, and now we're doing them for Holy Week. You know, there's a first creation week, but there's also a new creation week for Holy Week. And what's fascinating is I started lining up the things that we celebrate each day of the week in Holy Week. And all of a sudden, they started lining up exactly with the creation week. And I was shocked. You know, I thought it was just a nice poetic connection. Oh, there's a new creation week. No, there really is a new creation week and what Christ is doing. So if you sign up on our website, I'll post the link below. You can sign up for our newsletter, and we send all the reflections to you straight to your inbox early in the morning, so you can wake up every morning and read the reflections. We'll have a meditation and a Bible reading. You can also follow us on Twitter, and I post all the reflections on Twitter and also on our blog. And we have a lot of other great stuff going up on the blog. You know, we have a student who's studying, is doing his master's in bioethics and is writing for us on how we can approach bioethics from the perspective of creation. We have a woman who's doing very nice work creating coloring and activity books for your kids based on creation.
Wow.
And she's also put together a puppet show for creation that we're going to be releasing soon through the Creation Theology Fellowship, which will have a competition with prizes. So, you know, you can put together your Sunday school and have them submit where you'll go through the 7 days of creation. Everyone gets a puppet for a different part of creation that's being made.
Brother, I am blown away. You're doing a lot of incredible work, and I'm thrilled that you were able to join me. I'm glad you were able to come on, talk about everything that you're working on. And I've got to be very clear. I'm thrilled about this event, excited about it, and I look forward to having you on again with me, brother. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. God bless.
God bless you, brother. You have a great evening.